Let's talk about government organizational structure, the state, the county, municipality. A brief lesson on national government structure before we get more granular and into the municipality level. This refresher will help you see the pattern that is etched into the fabric of what we call democracy. Not trying to make this a high school level video, but use it as a refresher. I have learned that many citizens are not aware of this after they passed their high school tests years back. But the federal government is composed of three distinct branches, which are the legislative, executive, and judicial, whose powers are vested by the U.S. Constitution and the Congress, the President, and the federal courts, respectively. The legislative branch. Established by Article 1 of the Constitution, the legislative branch consists of the House of Representatives and the Senate, which together form the United States Congress. The Constitution grants Congress the sole authority to enact legislation and declare war, the right to confirm or reject many presidential appointments, and substantial investigative powers. The House of Representatives is made up of 435 elected members, divided among 50 states in proportion to their total population. The Senate is composed of 100 senators, 2 of each state. The Vice President of the United States serves as the President of the Senate and may cast a decisive vote in the event of a tie in the Senate. The executive branch. The one branch where most know much about because they are governed by the national elections and the prominent political parties. The power executive branch is vested into the President of the United States, who also acts as head of state and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The President is responsible for implementation and enforcing the laws written by Congress, and to that end appoints the heads of the federal agencies, including the cabinet. The Vice President is also part of the executive branch, ready to assume the presidency should the need arise. The cabinet and independent federal agencies are responsible for the day-to-day enforcement and administration of the federal laws. Then there's the judicial branch. The branch that is known as the branch of accountability, where the executive and the legislative branches are elected by the people. Members of the judicial branch are appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. An amazing checks and balances. Article 3 of the Constitution, which establishes the judicial branch, leaves Congress significant discretion to determine the shape and the structure of the federal judiciary. Even the number of Supreme Court justices is left to Congress. At times, there have been as few as 6, while the current number, which is 9, with 1 Chief Justice and 8 Associate Justices, has only been in place since 1869. The Constitution also grants Congress the power to establish courts inferior to the Supreme Court, and to that end, Congress has established the United States District Courts, which try most federal cases, and 13 United States Courts of Appeals, which review appeal district court cases. Federal judges can only be removed through impeachment by the House of Representatives and conviction in the Senate. Judges and justices serve no fixed term. They serve until their death, retirement, or conviction by the Senate. By design, this insulates them from the temporary passions of the public and allows them to apply the law with only justice in mind and not electoral or political concerns. State and local government. Now, let's get granular. Since we now understand this structure in the federal level, it can take it easier to understand the structure of the state government, as each state emulates the most part of the structure exemplified by the federal government. Under the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, all powers not granted to the federal government are reserved for the states and the people. All state governments are modeled after the federal government and consist of 3 branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. The U.S. Constitution mandates that all states uphold a republican form of government, although the 3-branch structure is not required. The executive branch in the state level, we have the governor. He or she is elected by popular vote of the citizens of the state, and in the comparison, he is essentially the chief executive officer or presiding leader of the state. Although with the governor, there is the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the secretary of state, and auditors and commissioners. States do reserve the right to organize in any way, so they often vary greatly with regard to executive structure. Then there's legislative structure in the state level. All 50 states have legislatures made up of elected representatives who consider matters brought forth by the governor or introduced by its members to create legislation that becomes law. The legislature also approves a state's budget and initiates tax legislation and articles of impeachment. The latter is part of the system of checks and balances among the three branches of government that mirrors the federal government and prevents any branch from abusing its power. There is only one state that differs from the type of organization, and that is Nebraska. The judicial branch and the state level are usually led by the state Supreme Court, which hears appeals from lower level state courts. Court structures and judicial appointments elections are determined either by legislation or the state constitution. The Supreme Court focuses, of the state of course, on correcting errors made in lower courts and therefore holds no trials. Rulings made in state Supreme Courts are normally binding. However, when questions are raised regarding consistency with the U.S. Constitution, matters may be appealed directly to the United States Supreme Court. So now let's go down even more granular to the local government. Local governments generally include two tiers: counties and municipalities, or cities and towns. Various kinds of districts also provide functions in local government outside county or municipal boundaries, such as school districts or fire protection districts. Municipalities can be structured in many ways as defined by state constitutions and are called variously townships, villages, boroughs, cities, or towns. Municipal governments, those defined as cities, towns, villages, and townships, are generally organized around a population center and in most cases correspond to the geographical designation used by the United States Census Bureau for reporting of housing and population statistics. Municipalities generally take responsibility for parks, recreational services, police and fire department, housing services, emergency medical services, municipal courts, transportation services, including public transportation, and public works, which is the streets, the sewers, the snow removal, signage, and so forth. Whereas the federal government and state governments share power in countless ways, a local government must be granted power by the state. In general, mayors, city councils, and other governing bodies are directly elected by the people.